Well, everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this particular week, I'm doing another edition of my segment, What If? So basically, come up with an idea that's out of the box, outlandish, and hasn't happened. Maybe not can happen. But this time, I have my buddy Luke from SiftPop joining me. Luke, thank you so much for coming on.
Nice to be here.
And the what if scenario we have, so I was watching Rashomon with some of my friends for my monthly movie club. And, you know, a lot of like medieval Japan, samurai setting, stuff like that. And the idea popped up in the room, what if Akira Kurosawa did something like Game of Thrones? And then my idea was like, what if he did Game of Thrones? And then that's why you're watching this video. So basically, we're going to talk a little bit about why Akira Kurosawa would have been an interesting choice to direct some kind of film series or television series based on Game of Thrones. And then we'll get into some more details. But Luke, what are some of the reasons that pop out to you why this would be an interesting idea?
Well, firstly, I would like to know, or I would like to see his kind of narrative structure, in a story as big and as complex as Game of
Mhm.
Thrones. I think it's fair to say we're gonna spoil most of Game of Thrones. Is it? Like,
There's well, at least the show, because
mm,
we can't completely spoil the books
yes,
because they're not done yet.
yes, correct.
So, yes,
Just a fair warning for everybody. Just, if you haven't still watched Game of Thrones, or if you haven't finished and you plan on going back, I think we probably will, delve into some of its ending, because I think that's, where my one of my points lies as well.
mhm.
No, but I would love to, as you kind of said, like Rashomon, or what I thought of was Ran, you know,
Yes,
uh
100%.
that kind of, I would love to see still the same story of Game of Thrones. Obviously we need to follow the books to a certain extent,
Mhm.
and but I would like to see his spin off. Maybe we get several episode arc with just these characters, maybe with just the Lannisters, or with just,
Mhm.
or just the Targaryens, and then similar kind of story or similar kind of time frame, and then we shift a couple of episodes later just to, just to the other one, and kind of see. It's kind of, it's that kind of pull and push of, oh, this is how it happened. No, actually, this is the other side of the story.
Well, and I think that's an interesting choice too, because that's what the books are like. Like the books are told through specific characters' perspectives.
Mhm.
Obviously, the show is, for all intents and purposes, a neutral
Mhm.
perspective of just watching what's happening. The books, like each chapter is somebody's perspective. And I think that would lend itself, like you said, I think that would be very interesting having a couple episodes a season telling the story of like what this season would be from
Mhm.
a specific group and then bouncing around. Because
Mhm.
that's the thing. There's so much to work with in Song of Ice and Fire that I think Kurosawa could have a lot of interesting fun with it.
Yes. And I also need to preface, I've never actually read any books. So where I'm coming from is purely the show perspective.
Okay.
Like I have never, unfortunately, read any of the books. So I know people who have, and I know,
Mhm.
the books have much, obviously, more details. There are, the
Mhm.
books, the TV show is simplified because it kind of needs to be. But yeah, so all of my ideas are based on purely TV show, because I cannot judge about, I cannot, judge books because I never read them.
I read the first book so far. I don't want to dive too deep because I don't
Hmm.
want to get attached
Hmm.
without there being an ending.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just know at least some of the structure and stuff like that based off reading the first book because I would
Hmm.
assume it's consistent. But I also want to see Kurosawa's scope to the
Hmm.
story. And like he directed great action. He's able to create such amazing, beautiful look to everything.
Hmm.
And I think it would be really cool. And like I did have Ron in my mind in
Mhm.
terms of like the colors, the cinematography.
Yes.
I think it could be a little bolder than what you get in the show, which the show's very like grungy.
Hmm.
It's just like it's all the same color scale on
Hmm.
everything. I think it would be pretty cool if they brought some, like even Dorne, like the random sections of Dorne that we get, it's all just like it's all colored like sand. Uh, there isn't even that much like life to it, and we're not reviewing the show,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to get into a whole entire thing about how they completely wasted Dorne to begin with, but whatever.
Hmm.
But the idea is, I feel like it'd be cool to see his visual representation of everything.
Yes. 100%.
And one of the other things that really stood out to me about it too is because of Ron, because of Rashomon, he can capture that tension, the politics, the
Hmm.
backstabbing, all
Hmm.
of these things in these complex characters in an interesting way. Now, the idea that I had, and this is kind of where a lot of this wanting to do this came from, is I think it'd be really cool if they kind of based a lot of these nations in Westeros and elsewhere based off of like actual cultures in real life. Because
Hmm.
generally, most of the Game of Thrones characters in Westeros are, white. Some of them are a little pastier than others, especially as you go more north.
Yeah.
Definitely like the wildlings are a little bit more like Scandinavian,
Hmm.
especially with some of the casting. Dorne's obviously supposed to be like Spain, like
Yes.
very specifically. And then obviously you have like the Dothraki who are different and the Unsullied, but like generally it's all just British actors because
I was gonna say a lot of British actors,
yeah.
Scottish, Irish, all of these. Yeah.
So I wanted to shake things up. So
Hmm.
quick rundown of how I kind of reconceived some of these places. So first off, I envisioned the Targaryens. I wanted to do something different. And yes, not all this is going to be book accurate, which
Hmm.
doesn't have to be because,
It's a
obviously,
fantasy. It's
yeah.
you know.
So I obviously the Targaryens have a very specific look to them.
Hmm.
I kind of reimagine them as like Gaelic
Okay.
like influences and stuff like that. Also, very specific look would be distinct compared to the rest of the cast. I imagine much of the North and the Vale and such with like Scandinavian actors.
Hmm.
So like a lot Northern European. So like I think I threw in a couple of German actors, but most of them are like from Sweden and Norway and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um the Riverlands, which I didn't do a whole lot of casting for that because like
Yep.
there's not a whole lot of important characters for like a big broad stroke conversation like this. I just made it Russia.
Hmm.
So like I picked like one Russian actor to pop up in here. Um, One of the biggest things that popped out to me that I was so excited to do was make the Iron Islands Australia.
Oh.
And I'm gonna get to one very specific casting that I wanted to do that kind of made me want to do this.
Hmm.
Um, like the Waterlands area, which is like where Casterly Rock is and the Lannisters are from, I made them China. So
Okay.
like this is a lot of like the southern sections of Westeros I made into specific Asian nations. So
Hmm.
like I figured China for the Lannisters. Um, I had the Stormlands, so like the Baratheons and such. They're the Japanese,
Okay.
so a lot of like the Baratheon characters are going to be those like big Japanese actors, and I feel like would be most representative of where Akira Kurosawa is coming from, obviously being Japanese.
Hmm.
The Reach, so like the Tyrells, I made the Korea,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then I made Dorne India. I thought that
Okay.
would be an interesting kind of like shaking up. And then there's a couple other random characters that I threw in here, but we'll get to that. But did you have any like specific ideas of like how you broke it up, or was it more just
I tried. So the way I interpreted this question or
okay,
this prompt was,
which is
what if
fine. You can interpret
Akira,
it however.
exactly, what if Akira Kurosawa was still alive today?
Yep.
And then I tried to honor, let's redo Game of Thrones. So let's put more of Asian representation,
Yep.
but not just Asian. And it's going to be all over a map. And so it's not necessarily. I didn't want to group just Lannisters will be, I don't know, Koreans, or like I get the appeal and I actually like your plan.
Mhm.
I just said I just went, character. I basically what I've done, I opened up the IMDb front page for Game of Thrones, and I,
Yeah.
took the first about 14 big characters,
Okay.
and I just, put them in order, and I just, then thought about. So, for example, Daenerys is this and this person. Obviously, I've
Mhm.
seen all the shows, so I know her arc.
Yep.
So I just try to imagine who would I like to see in her role, and then I went, purely based on, oh, who would I like to imagine in this specific role and for what reason. So I'm more, but yeah, my choices are, I have some Japanese actors, I have some Chinese actors, I have some Korean actors, I have some European actors. So I
Yep.
have quite odd pick for the Stark sisters. So,
Uh,
but I just the moment I thought of that, I was like, this is too. I feel like this is too good not to use it, and they are sisters in real life. So
okay. So what I'm going to say then is, which also my choice to do that caused me a lot of problems
oh
because some of these actors, like some of these characters, are really hard to cast.
yes.
Like some of
Mhm.
them very specifically. What I'm going to say is that Luke, let's go through your list,
Okay.
and then you talk about who you cast, and I'll throw in somebody who I cast.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's go through your list.
So I started with Daenerys, who is,
Mhm.
like, I would argue is the focal point. You can, Game of Thrones is one of those shows, there's not necessarily one lead, but I'm
Yep.
guessing it would either be her or Jon Snow.
Yep.
So with Daenerys, originally obviously played by Emilia Clarke, I went with Ko Shibasaki, who is best known as Mitsuko from Battle Royale, or I
Okay.
believe she was in 47 Ronin. So I know she hasn't done as much work,
Mhm.
but I've always really liked her Mitsuko from Battle Royale. I love that movie. And I try to imagine, somebody who can start all innocent, kind of clueless, because she was
Mhm.
brought up in this, like, very sequestered, like, environment. Basically, oh, you're just gonna marry this dude, to join kingdoms. And then she slowly comes into her power. And then, she seems to be on the right path until she isn't.
Mhm.
And that's what always strike me with from Battle Royale, and then especially with Mitsuko's character. The actress, I always thought she was very fascinating. For the little time she had in that movie, I always really liked her so much. So that would be my choice for Daenerys.
Awesome. Like I mentioned before, I was going for like a Gaelic approach to it,
Yeah.
and I put Saoirse Ronan. I thought would
Mm,
be especially because Daenerys really is one of like the main leads of this show,
mhm,
and I think Saoirse Ronan obviously has a lot of strong acting chops and star power. And
mhm.
I think it would be an interesting, especially where her arc goes, I think it would be an interesting challenge in terms of like her going like full blown villain mode by the end.
Yes.
Obviously, we would take our time.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
when Akira Kurosawa would take his time making this show and not try to rush 3 seasons into one at the end. But
That
like,
was my last point actually about Kurosawa, that he wouldn't rush the ending. That literally,
no.
that's my notes.
Well,
It's in my notes.
realistically, I feel like this show should have been 10, but they just, I guess, didn't have the time to really flesh it out and
Mhm.
everything. For whoever's reason for rushing the show at the end, whether it was the showrunners or HBO or whatever. I can't imagine it was HBO. Who would want to wrap that up early? Like it's a giant
I
cash cow. So, but
Yeah,
anyway,
no,
that's
I
beside
think
the
now
point.
we know. I think now we know it was the duo behind who was writing it because they wanted to move on. And HBO was telling them, "Oh, we can give you 2 more seasons if you want. It's fine," because they were making so much money off of it. Yeah,
Well, look where it got them. Anyway,
exactly.
so who's next on your list?
So next would be Jon Snow.
Yep.
Obviously, originally Kit Harington, great performance. And I was having a bit of a problem with him, or like just struggle, because I think for most of these we can I think we can agree, despite not all the season not being as great, most people have done absolutely their best, so it's very
Mhm.
hard to recast them. And I stumble upon somebody who I thought this would be kind of ace, which is Barry Keon or Keon. It's
Uh,
the guy
I
from
think it's
Banshees of Inisherin.
Kyogen. I
Kyo-
think it is. But yes, I know who you're talking about, and that's an
Yeah,
interesting choice.
because I again, like, Jon Snow starts as this kind of person who search for himself. He's just he's the bastard. He doesn't know where he belongs. He doesn't know. He doesn't really know where he's going. Then he ends up on a wall. Then he does this. Then he kind of becomes Jesus at some point.
Yeah,
So,
he
and I
rose
just
again.
exactly. And I just thought, with Barry, we've seen him in so many great things, like Banshees of Inisherin.
Mhm.
I truly believe he's one of the uppercomers when it comes to, we've only have to see his peak yet, and he's gonna be the next big thing in the next 5-10 years. He's gonna be the next, like, Leo, like that kind of stardom.
Absolutely. That's an interesting choice. And I think it's kind of going against because like Barry Keoghan's not exactly the most traditionally handsome actor.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think that's an interesting choice. You know who if I were going to cast him in this show, you know who I probably would cast him as?
Hmm.
Ramsey.
That would be. I feel like that would be
Based
the.
off of killing of a sacred deer,
Yep.
I
Yep.
could see him being very messed up. Oh, and obviously it looks like he's going to be the Joker. So
Hmm.
like I could definitely see that, but I think that's an interesting choice.
Hmm.
Another thing that I'm throwing out there, because first off, this is a fantasy casting. This can't happen. Akira Kurosawa is dead. One
Yes.
other thing that I did was I messed with time.
Me
So
too.
like I didn't really care how like what era these actors are from. I kind of
Hmm.
mix things because obviously there has to be one very specific actor in this show because of Akira Kurosawa, but I'll get to that. Um, I thought, especially because this is kind of a spoiler to the show, but like Jon Snow's not just a Stark, he's a
Yeah.
Targaryen. So
Yes.
like I had like a younger Jamie Dornan
Mm.
because I think he's been doing it like he's actually a really talented actor.
Yes.
He's pulled a Robert Pattinson where he started off in a horrible franchise that people are like, ugh. And then he's shown that he actually has some real acting chops. I think,
Hmm.
especially with like the more traditional, like handsome kind of casting that they did with Jon Snow in the show, I thought he would be an interesting choice.
Hmm.
Especially because like he's an Irish actor, and that would kind of allude to the fact that like he doesn't really fit in with the rest of the Starks in this scenario. But I thought that would be an interesting choice. But Barry Keoghan's definitely a very interesting choice.
Hmm. I was thinking about, like, maybe Ramsey or somebody is, like, for him more of an evil, but I
Mhm.
thought it would be almost as obvious, because, yeah, because of the Joker connection, he's potentially
Yeah,
going to be next Joker. And I thought, what if we actually get to see him act as somebody who's more of a better person than the villain of the, like, most of the show, for
yeah,
most of the Game of Thrones. But
absolutely. Next up,
so next up would be the Stark sisters, Sansa and Arya, obviously originally played by Maisie Williams, and I just slipped my mind. Sophie,
Sophie Turner. Yeah,
yes, she's just divorcing Joe Jonas or Sophie
yeah.
Jonas, but yeah, they are just divorcing. And I thought, for some reason, I just thought, obviously they're sisters in a show, and I've always thought of these sisters being underappreciated for the amount of talent they actually have, and it's Dakota and Elle Fanning. So I
Interesting. Yeah.
casted Sansa. That would be, obviously, she's the older one, so Dakota would be Sansa, and Elle would be Arya. And my reasoning is, first of all, I just saw the Equalizer 3, and I thought Dakota was fine for
Mhm.
the amount of time she was given. I think she is underappreciated, and same as Elle Fanning. I saw this movie a couple of months ago. Now name escapes me, but it's a kind of low budget movie, and Elle Fanning plays this kind of woman in problems,
Mhm.
and she was great in that movie. And I feel like, and I heard really good things about The Great, which just got canceled after
Mhm.
third season.
Yeah,
So
she's fantastic in that show. So is Nicholas Holt.
see,
That's sad that that show got canceled, but
exactly. And I just feel like those, I would love to see them together. And I would love to for more people to understand how more talented these two are. Just
Mhm.
like put them in a like flashier roles and just let them shine.
Yep. Absolutely. They're both fantastic actors. I know Dakota hasn't gotten as much work
Hmm.
recently. Elle Fanning, I think's definitely become the bigger star at this point. But I think
Hmm.
that's a really interesting bit of casting. So mine's a big cheat. Like they would have to be like much younger than obviously they are right now.
Okay.
But going with how I wanted the North to be representative like Scandinavian actors. I thought Sansa, a much younger Rebecca Ferguson, because I love her. I,
Oh.
I think that would be an interesting performance, and then a much younger Alicia Vikander as Arya.
Oh.
So like, I saved some of the older
Hmm.
Scandinavian actresses that I had for some of like the more parent type roles and stuff like that. But like basically all the Stark children that I cast would need to be like much younger.
Yeah.
But in idea, I think those would both would be really interesting,
Hmm.
especially like seeing how powerful Rebecca Ferguson would be by the end of the show. And
Yes.
like, especially with Alicia Vikander, and like, I thought she did a great job in Tomb Raider.
Hmm.
And I would have actually liked to see more of her doing in Tomb Raider. I think she could do some really interesting things with Arya.
Hmm.
But who do you have next?
So next would be Lannisters. So let's
Okay.
start with Jamie Lannister,
Uh-huh.
originally Nikolai Coster-Waldau. And I thought, what if Henry Golding was my Jamie Lannister?
Damn. That's
He's
a
got the
good
charm
yes.
because again, I was thinking about it more of like, more of what he represents, right? So you need
Yep.
somebody who's charming enough that even though we are introduced to him as the literal Kingslayer,
Yep.
and he has some questionable relationship with his own sister, we are still kind of rooting for him, and we see his story arc actually becoming, this great guy until it kind of gets
Until
all
it
too
until he didn't. Oh,
until it
yeah.
just gets, in one episode it just all goes away for
Yes.
reasons. But I thought, who would be the guy who's got the charisma, the charm, the
Hmm.
acting chops to like deliver? And I just thought of Henry Golding because
Yeah.
I feel like
A
he's one of
really
those like
good bit of
upper
casting.
comers
Uh-huh.
who like he's done some things like The Gentleman. He's been, he was great in that
He
movie.
was so good in that. He was so
Hmm.
much fun.
Yeah,
And, and like he could be really dangerous too. And I think that's
exactly.
a part of Jamie's character as well, because like he is one of the best warriors in
Hmm.
Westeros. I do like that casting. That's interesting. I know, like I mentioned before, I made like the Lannisters Chinese,
Yep.
and I wanted to get one of the biggest, most dangerous stars on screen, and I picked Jet Li.
Nice.
He doesn't necessarily have the interesting thing is I don't think he necessarily has the uh actually, you know what?
Hmm. Now you're questioning yourself.
Yes. I kind of because like I think I came up with a better idea. Because obviously I don't think Jet like the point that you made, like Jamie's supposed to be like really charismatic too.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I don't know if Jet Li necessarily has that
Hmm.
in the
Yeah,
way
they
that like
like.
Jamie Lannister is. I do like really like Tony Leung,
Oh.
who had his first American and like English performance in Shang-Chi. I
Hmm.
think he would be an more interesting choice for Jamie.
Okay.
So I changed my mind, and I can do this because it's my show. So I'm going with Tony Leung on that one because, especially because seeing some of his films with Wong Kar-wai, like
Hmm.
he could really sell like the romantic elements, and like despite the fact that they're kind of gross, obviously there is romance in this show in regards to Jamie, at least with his sister, and then
Hmm.
obviously we all wanted him to be with Brienne of Tarth, but whatever.
Yes.
Anyway, so Luke, who's your next one?
So my next one might be a bit controversial because it's Tyrion, obviously portrayed brilliantly by Peter Dinklage. So this is where I took a different approach
Uh,
because first of all, I'm not as familiar with like Asian cinema and all this and all the older stars, and also I understand, and I didn't want to just type, need to have like a little person for the sake of him being little person. But I just thought, what if it's Kurosawa movie or it would be like Kurosawa TV show, right?
mm,
And I think we have the same actor. You'll probably have him in different role, but
yes.
Toshiro Mifune as Tyrion. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why. It's not just because of the Kurosawa connection, but I thought of what if he obviously he would be in his younger years, like let's say
Mhm.
50s, 60s, right? And I thought of what if we take different approach because Tyrion is the outcast, right?
Yes.
He's Lannister, but he's not Lannister. He's the
Yeah.
outcast. He's the like I don't even know how they call him like in the show. But because of obviously of his growth. So I just thought, what if Toshiro would be in his like more unhinged performances because he like I've seen a couple of his movies and he can be unhinged. He can be almost crazy. So
Like
what
a
if
Seven Samurai
yes,
kind
yeah.
of, because
Hmm.
he's the rogue of the group.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know what? I had the same thought about Tyrion because, like I mentioned before, forcing them to be specific
Hmm.
countries really makes some of these casting hard. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I really don't know a lot of actors that aren't American or English
Hmm.
who are little people
Yes.
and have dwarfism, just like, so I did go with the outcast casting too and thought who would be the most different out of the
Hmm.
main Chinese actors that I know, and I kind of went with Jackie Chan only
Oh.
because he could be more goofy,
Hmm.
and it's a different kind of vibe than the rest of the family, because
Hmm.
like I wanted, I mean, Tyrion has to stick out some reason and has
Yes.
to be different for some reason. It has to be ridiculed by people for some reason.
Hmm.
So I do appreciate your casting because boy would Tyrion be so much fun to watch just being Mifune on screen going completely unhinged.
And I can imagine Jackie Chan as his what was the movie Legend of the Drunken Master, something like
Uh,
that, like that kind of
he
like
certainly drinks.
drunken. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And trying
that's
to
Tyrion.
incorporate that in. So for the record, Tyrion is probably the hardest casting out of
Yeah.
the main characters in this. Um, and here's the thing: if I were to think about if you were trying to make him a little person, like who would be better pick acting wise than Peter Dinklage?
That's the thing. We don't have that many choices for reasons, beyond our
And that is a
unfortunately,
systematic issue.
that's the thing, isn't it?
So
But
So
yeah,
the real culprit of this is lack of representation of actors. So there you go. So go continue the Snow White argument that people are having online and Oompa Loompas and why Hugh Grant is an Oompa Loompa.
oh
Uh,
yes.
so Luke, who is your next one?
So next one would be Cersei Lannister, originally
Mhm.
by portrayed by Lena Headey.
Yep.
So I've googled how to pronounce his name, but I think everybody should know who she is. It's Zie Young. So we should know her from House of Flying Daggers or Memoirs of Geisha. She's the main
Nice.
actress. She is one of the most I would say one of the most like influential Chinese. I believe she's Chinese actresses that managed to actually go through Hollywood as well.
Yep.
And again, I thought of who is Cersei in the show. Lena Headey just portrayed her brilliantly, and you need somebody who's kind of cold, but kind of you understand what she's about.
Hmm.
You need to be able to deliver in the big scenes, but you need to also be deliver, for her to step back and let others kind of shine. And I feel like the would be great in that. I again every time everything I've seen her in, I absolutely adored her, and I wish she would work more of like mainstream Hollywood films. But I definitely need to catch up on her and like see more of her movies.
That's definitely an interesting choice, and you brought some interesting points up too, especially like kind of taking a step back when other characters are on screen. I went with an easy
Mhm.
Chinese actress pick, which is Michelle Yeoh. I
Uh
like I feel like she would be the because by the end, Cersei is one of the biggest characters in the show.
yes.
And Michelle Yeoh definitely has a great range. I
Mhm.
definitely think her physicality would be underutilized as Cersei because like Cersei doesn't do anything on her own
Yeah.
in terms of like physically, but boy, watching Crazy Rich Asians and seeing how vindictive and mean Michelle
Hmm.
Yeoh can be, and
Hmm.
even just from like Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's a very complex character, and she's such
Yes.
a great actress. I thought that would be an interesting choice. So basically, I just went with all the biggest names in like
Hmm.
Chinese cinema that you could possibly find. So there you
Hmm.
go. We're going for the big, big box office here.
I've almost went with Michelle Yeoh for Brienne of Tar. I just thought, like, who's kind of
Nice.
like but I didn't, and because I managed to think of one more. I think maybe more of a badass, or at least equally as badass. But we'll get to her.
We'll get there. What's your next one?
It's Tywin Lannister. So obviously
Yes.
Charles Dance, the big father figure
Yep.
of all the Lannisters, and I went with Takeshi Kitano, also of Battle Royale fame, or most
Mhm.
recently Ghost in a Shell, the American version. He
Oh,
is
okay.
he is this kind of like, again, if you've seen Battle Royale, he's the teacher who everybody knows when they
Mhm.
get to the island, and it's like, oh, Battle Royale, now we need to fight, now you need to fight each other. And he has this presence in every movie you see him in. He's got the presence about him. He's got that kind of like Charles Dance, the first scene where he's skinning the deer, right? And
Yep.
you, within those 7 minutes, you know exactly what that character is.
Yep.
You know exactly what like, you can imagine what his effect on his children is, and why his children are the way they are, to an extent. And I just was looking for somebody with that kind of charisma, with that kind of screen command, and Takeshi was to me, that was an easy choice.
Awesome. I like Tywin Lannister is one of my favorite characters from the show. I'm
Hmm.
not saying I like Tywin Lannister,
Hmm.
but he's one of the most interesting characters in the show.
Oh yes.
And his big mistake was sleeping with his son's woman. It's just like, well, and then he died on a toilet.
Yeah.
But I picked James Hong because who's from like Big Trouble in Little China and Everything
Everything.
Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, yeah.
One, he has the stature too,
Hmm.
in terms of like that long, tall kind of
Hmm.
presence.
Hmm.
But obviously, he has such an interesting range. And like even just watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, the different versions of the grandfather that he portrays,
Hmm.
I'm really imagining like him in that very powerful role of straight out of like Big Trouble in Little China.
Hmm.
Obviously, I just think, and I think it would be a really awesome, like probably one of his last roles, theoretically, if this is like happening. Like that would be such a cool role for James Hong to like sink his teeth into. He certainly has range going from voicing Poe's dad in Kung Fu Panda
Hmm.
to so many different roles, but I thought he would be an interesting choice.
I was gonna say, talk about different roles. This dude's been working since 1950s. I believe his IMDb credit as an actor, he's got like 800 credits.
So
Like, it's
many.
insane. Like, he's
It's
been in
insane.
every TV show ever, pretty much,
Yes,
at
ever.
least once.
Who's next?
So Jorah Mormont, aka Ian Glenn, aka the Lord Friendzone, uh,
Yes,
just
100%.
And he's, and I wanted somebody who can be this, like, yeah, Lord Friendzone, this non-threatening but like good friend. And I thought of Christopher Lambert from Mortal Kombat, like that kind of 1995 Mortal Kombat Christopher Lambert, where he's this kind of like this older dude, but he's
Uh-huh.
chilling. He's chilling. You can tell he knows what's up,
I
and
think so.
he's got moves. Yeah, exactly. And it's just that kind of and you can tell he's up. He would be interested in Daenerys, and he's like killing him. And I think
Yeah.
Lambert could deliver.
Well, and it's interesting too, since he was Highlander. So, like,
Hmm.
obviously, he has the background in like the combat kind of
Yes.
character as well. I went with Viggo Mortensen
Ooh.
because straight up, like, just imagine Aragorn in that situation. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like that would work, work pretty
Okay.
darn well, and especially because like Jorah's an interesting character because he's in the show so much. Like
Yep.
he's not like a main character, but he's there all the
All the
time.
time.
So
Yep.
like I think it would be that would be an interesting present because like Viggo Mortensen's not the kind of actor that he needs the spotlight. And
Hmm.
even Aragorn's not the kind of main character who's begging for the spotlight. I think
Correct.
I think he would make an interesting choice for that. But I do now I'm just imagining Highlander as
Hmm.
Jorah Mormont, and it's great. Now we got to put Clancy Brown in here. So, oh my god. See,
Oh.
if I were picking American actors, my God, can you imagine Clancy Brown, the Kurgan, as either like the Hound or like the Mountain at some point in this? Bam.
Yeah, that'd be
They're not
good.
my casting because I restricted myself, but that would be fun.
Yep, that'd be great.
Who do you have next?
Next would be Samwell Tarly. Our favorite, John's favorite. John's best pal.
Mhm.
It's a big role, originally portrayed by John Bradley, and I gender swapped this role because I struggled
Interesting.
so much with him, and I just thought of, does he need to be guy? Does he need to be like? And then I went with Korean actress. So now I hope I'll butcher it no matter what. Apparently now she goes by Hoyeon, but she's Jung Hoyeon, and she is most known as from Squid Game.
Okay.
She's Kang Se-byung from Squid Game, and she's like actress and model. Apparently, the first South Korean to ever appear in Vogue on her own in 130 years. She's so popular, especially after Squid Game. And I thought her character in Squid Game was fascinating. I really liked her, and I could see her being that kind of role where John, or Samwell, you know, he is this goody two shoe guy,
Mhm.
but throughout the series, he needs to, his big arc is finding the strength to, stand up for himself and need to kind of go against his family because he is this family's disappointment. We often forget because we only see him interacting with John. We forget that he is from a noble family, quite noble
Yeah.
family, and that's what makes him such a disappointment in his father's eyes, as we find out in later seasons. And I did imagine her, Hoyan would be awesome in that role. So I gender swapped that role.
That's an interesting choice. I'm trying to remember. Was his family like were they loyal to House Lannister
I
or is it Tyrell? Because
honestly, they were not that prominent, so I cannot. I think it was Tyrell. I cannot tell you because that's the other thing. We also don't really didn't get many scenes with them. If I remember correctly, they were
yeah, because
only
we got
there
like that
for.
one episode where he
Mhm.
goes home
Yes, yes,
and then they die. His
pretty
dad and
much.
his brother get like torched
Yes.
so very aggressively.
Hmm.
Because like I'm gonna feel like a jerk because I casted a whole bunch of actors and forgot Sam.
To
So
be fair, he gave
um,
me such a hard time, so I kind of blame you. Like it was such a hard, for me, such a hard time to, because he's this lovable guy. He's done it in a lot of episodes, but it's almost like he's always like the character almost in most of them.
And like what was so terrible is his big moment in the show is finding out John's lineage,
Yep.
and they didn't do anything with
And then he writes a book about it.
yes. It's just like I do have to go back and really think about it because like obviously he's like one of the few main characters in the show who are not like lean or fit in the
Yep.
show. So
Mhm.
like if you're going in that route, like trying to find an actor that, you know, same like body type and stuff like that, that would fit that. Or just in general, you want somebody who's lovable but like inconspicuous, I
Mhm.
guess, on screen, because like he's not the character that takes up a lot of the attention and screen time from the other actors, but
Right.
like we get behind him and they have to be like an empathetic kind of actor. I do like the idea of gender swapping. You know what's terrible? You know who I thought of first popped in
Mhm.
my head was Aquafina.
Oh,
Because like
yeah.
purely based off of her being sidekick in Shang-Chi and everything, I thought that that would be an interesting choice.
Yeah, I can see
It
that.
would be an interesting choice. And based off of my own rules, the main reason I asked, like, I couldn't remember what section of Westeros he's actually from because I'm like, because my own self put on
Mhm.
rules for this whole entire thing, I would have to think about what country the actor would have to be from. But like
Mhm.
off the cuff, I think that would be a fun choice. But Luke, who's your next one?
So Theon Greyjoy, aka Elfie Allen.
Uh,
So yet again, one of those poor bastards. He is such a poor bastard throughout this entire show. And he starts off well, and then just the way he kind of finish well, he finishes okay, I think, but like the middle part, the season 4 to 6 is just
Reek,
hell. Yep,
that
it's
whole
just
thing.
hell. And my casting, this was, I believe that's the only American one because I couldn't think of anybody else. And then this name popped into my mind, and I was like, it'd be a great departure for him.
Mhm.
Tom Holland, Spider-Man.
Interesting.
Because
Well,
imagine him, he needs to have
well,
this
Tom
character.
Holland's English, isn't he?
Oh, wait, yes,
See,
he's
look, you
English.
didn't have any
So yeah,
actors
no,
still, but there you go.
I'm so used to him being Spider-Man with that American accent
Right?
that it just like
Oh, that
yeah.
moment when I heard Christian Bale get his
Hmm.
Oscar, and I'm like,
Yep.
wait, what? His
No, you're
most
right.
thick Cockney accent. I'm just like, what the hell's happening?
No, he is English. That's yeah, you're right.
But
I
I
so
do like the casting though. That see, that would be very interesting, and a lot of
mhm.
people would be like, "What are you doing to my Spider-Man?"
Because
But
imagine him like because he starts like he is best buddies with Starks, so we
yeah,
like him and he is good, and then he goes through this hell and back, which I thought would provide like great story arc for Holland's character, and like actually gets him showcase his acting chops more than oh I can be this quippy likable guy. That's not a problem. He's gotten mastered. I would like to see him in more of a challenging role. And I thought of his Alfie Allen's like the entire arc, and I just thought, imagine that scene where he loses his thing, and Tom Holland being there. I feel like he would nail it.
that would be a very interesting choice. He has the acting chops. He is a great
Hmm.
actor.
Hmm.
Since I went full blown Australian with
Mm.
the Iron Islands, I went with Cody Smith McPhee.
Oh.
He definitely has like that awkward kind of a
Hmm.
presence that Alfie Allen has as Theon too. And like
Hmm.
I never really bought Theon as like I'm taking control of this castle. I'm like, oh yeah. So like it's one of those things where it's like I would feel the same way with Cody Smith McPhee in that role, just being like, are you though?
Hmm.
And then he definitely is one of those actors like he can do all kinds of things. I have so much more respect for him as an actor ever since Power of the Dog, where I'm
Hmm.
just like, oh, he could play one really messed up shit, honestly.
Yep.
And it's one of those kinds of things. Like he's a really good actor. I think he has that vibe.
Hmm.
It's like him and like Asa Butterfield have like that same kind of like weird awkwardness that they could bring to the role. But I went with Cody Smith McPhee for that one.
to me they could play brothers. Asa and him look
Yeah,
so much alike. I
right.
sometimes have a hard time recognizing who, which one is which, because I'm like, they just, yeah.
There you go. Who's next?
So my next on my list is Lord Varys. The eunuch.
Yep.
Show makes quite a few jokes about that. Conleth Hill, obviously great performance. And I here went with another Mortal Kombat pick, Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa. you
Mhm.
know, and because I thought of somebody who is this kind of sneaky, who you would believe a king would have, they would be able to whisper to a king's ear, and the king would actually listen. You would never know where he stands until like very like later seasons. So, and I could imagine him in his 90s era being there, and this kind of like advisor where you never know where he stands, if he's like, is he good, is he evil,
Mhm.
does he truly have no cock? That's the thing. Those are the questions.
Varys is one of the most interesting characters in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and him and Littlefinger.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of argument with like how both of them went out in the show. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have that big of a problem with Littlefinger and his fate. I did with Varys though. But
I
like,
think the actor himself also had a big problem with that.
yes. But I picked C Ma. Basically anybody
Oh.
who's like in
Mm-hmm.
King's Landing, I also made Chinese
Mm-hmm.
actors. And like I really love him. Like he's been in a bunch of stuff. Like most recently, like, he was Mulan's father in the Disney live action Mulan. He's the father in The Farewell. He
Mm-hmm.
had a small role as the general in Arrival.
Mm-hmm.
I This is so weird. I know him a lot most from The Lady Killers because I'm
Okay.
such a big Coen Brothers fan. That's my least favorite Coen Brothers movie because it's
Mm-hmm.
not their best work. But like I do love him as the general with him like flipping the cigarette out of his mouth and everything. I think he'd bring an interesting vibe to Varys. Because that's the thing. Varys needs to be somebody you're like, do I trust you?
Yep. Yep.
And I think that would be an interesting because like I've seen him very stern, I've seen him warm,
Mm-hmm.
and there's that strange like spectrum there. But I think Varys is an interesting character to cast for this, and I think any actor you put into it would have a lot of fun. Because I know, was it Conleth
Conleth
Hill?
Hill. Hill. Yeah.
He auditioned for Robert
Oh, I didn't know that.
and then didn't get it because Mark
Mm-hmm.
Addy did. Which
Mm-hmm.
uh, Mark Addy as Robert Baratheon is something special. But
Yes.
like Conleth Hill did amazing as Varys, so I think it worked out
Mm-hmm.
for him. He also got a lot more time on the show.
Mm-hmm. Much more time. Yep.
Oh, but keep it going, Luke.
So Davos Seaworth, aka Liam
Yes.
Cunningham. So here I was thinking outside of the box, and I just thought of, he's got this swag about him. He's got like this cool factor. He's not cool, but he is. Like, he's not the coolest actor, but he always seems very cool in the scene,
Davos is
despite
one of
him
my
being
favorite characters. So
exactly, despite him being this like older dad, right? Like, you can
uh,
imagine this is like your dad's friend who comes
yeah,
over for a meal, right?
exactly.
So I just thought of this angle and I casted Pedro Pascal. I just thought of, what
He
if,
is the internet's daddy. So
pretty
now
much he's got this charm. He's got like, he's got the age to do it as well. And so therefore he's got the wisdom. And I feel like he would be this cool, charming, give him a couple of scenes, most episodes, and you're fine. So I just went
it's
with Pedro
interesting
Pascal.
because I picked one actor from Game of Thrones and I kept in the show,
Uh,
except I kept him the same character because I could not think of anybody to replace the actor who plays Tormund.
oh yeah, yeah,
And it still fits with my
yeah.
scheme
Hmm.
of like the wildlings would also be like Northern European and stuff like that. I'm like, I can't
Hmm.
change that. That it was tempting to recast some of the character, but like that's a great pick. I picked since Davos is with Stannis and
Yes.
like part of the Baratheons
Hmm.
part of the show. I picked Ken Watanabe
Oh, yes.
I thought he would be so great as like he doesn't get the spotlight a whole lot in this,
Hmm.
but I think he just has that presence that he's so likable,
Yeah.
and Davos is so likable, and I just think he would bring such a great like calm and
Hmm.
intelligent perspective
Hmm.
to it. And it's not like, hi, I'm Tywin Lannister, I'm smarter than you, or
Yeah.
even, hi, I'm Tyrion Lannister, I'm smarter than you.
Mm.
It's like that worldly kind of smart, and I think Ken Watanabe would bring that.
100%. He's great in like Inception or
Yeah,
Godzilla. All the just
he's in the Creator that's coming out around this time too. I'm excited. They don't even put any spotlight on him in that those trailers or anything. I'm just like, wait a minute, that's Ken Watanabe. And I
I was
looked
gonna
it
say,
up.
is he there? Like
He
I
is.
saw I saw trailers.
He's one of the, I guess, what robots, androids, whatever they're called,
Ah.
the machines in it. But yeah, he's one of the reasons I'm excited for that movie. But
Hmm.
yes, alrighty, keep it going.
So I have two more people.
Okay.
Brienne of Tarth, which is obviously Gwendolyn Christie, a
Yep.
big woman. Where's the big woman? And I went
Oh, so you
again.
know her too.
Yes, where's the big woman? No, it's just great. And she's, obviously Gwendolyn, she did a great work. I went with somebody who might not have her stature because obviously it's hard to find somebody of her
Yes.
stature, of her, like, height, of her presence. But I thought of somebody who is equally as badass because she needs to be. She's a protector, right? She
Yeah.
protects Sansa. She can go toe to toe with all the badasses and come out on top. And I thought of this is the role where I almost went to Michelle Yeoh, and I thought of Lucy Liu. And I was
Nice.
like, Lucy Liu's been on top. Like she, first of all, she doesn't really age. Like the
No,
like the
no,
Futurama,
honest.
like the Futurama joke where Lucy Liu wins Sexiest Woman Alive in 2000 and 2050, like or something
Yeah.
along. She still like looks pretty much the same. She can kick ass. We know because she's done so many action movies and she does it effortlessly. And you could tell, and I imagine her interacting with Sansa, just
Yeah.
protecting her and being that warrior who's willing to die for her, and having the romance with Jamie later on, and just she would bring the presence, she would bring the emotion, and she would bring the badassery.
Yeah, I went with the same thing because like Brienne I had with like the Japanese actors,
Mm.
and I could not, like, I'm not aware of any Japanese actresses that are the size of Gwendolyn Christie to
Yep.
begin with. And I'm just like, I went with Koyuki from The Last Samurai. And
Oh.
so like I also went in a route of like somebody who could really hold their own
Mhm.
physically in a film like this. Um I almost I just thought of this purely based off of John Wick Chapter 4. I was so impressed by pop singer Rina Sawayama.
Oh
That would be
yes.
cool too.
She was so great in that movie. Like there was, she was the daughter of, was it
Uh,
Ken? Was it Ken
yeah,
at
she
that?
was the daughter of Hiroki Sanada's
Oh no,
character.
Hiroki. Yeah, sorry, yeah, Hiroki. Yeah, no, she was
Yeah.
the yeah, no, she would be great.
Oh, I
Wow.
kind of like that pick better. See,
Mm.
now I'm thinking about it. Know
You
what? We're
trapped
gonna do
yourself.
that. And she can make original music for the show. Boom, there it is. Cross
Sorted.
promotion. Because I don't think any of her music would fit in Game of Thrones or in a Akira Kurosawa film, but whatever. Put
Yeah.
them in the credits.
No, yeah, 100%.
What people do all the time. So, um, who's next?
So my last pick, this is
Yep.
my very last one. So Littlefinger, Peter Baelish,
Yes.
aka Aidan Gillen. Obviously,
Yep.
you
So
never
good.
know. You never know
Yes.
what he's gonna do. He's always this. He talks like this.
Hi, Peter
And
Baelish.
yes. And I just thought of somebody unique, somebody who I would love to see in that role. And I went with another Korean actor, also from Squid Game, Park Hae-seo, who played, I don't know if you remember the kind of antagonist, the Cho
Okay.
Sang-woo in Squid Game,
Mhm.
who's basically, the guy who has all the fancy life, but he
Yeah.
doesn't. He's in a lot of debt, and he will do anything to get ahead and to actually win Squid Game. And I just imagine him as Littlefinger, where he would have the similar enough arc where he will do anything to win the Game of Thrones. He wants to sit on that, on that throne,
Mhm.
or he wants to get as close to, as possible to the real power.
There you
You
go.
know.
I think it's a good one. I picked fresh off of Ahsoka,
Mm.
Lars Mikkelsen, who's
Oh.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. I think he just has that like
Mm-hmm.
calculating kind of vibe and that like calmness. Because like you don't see Littlefinger lose his cool.
Yep.
He's always thinking, he's always scheming, and I think Lars Mikkelsen would be an
That's
interesting
a
choice.
great. That's a great choice.
I'm gonna kind of speed round some real quick before we wrap up. Khal Drogo, I had Jason Scott Lee, who most
Ooh.
recently was in the new Mulan. I
Okay.
thought that was an interesting choice. I think he's half Chinese, half Hawaiian.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was one of the other ones where I'm like, who can I pick that would be better than Jason Momoa for this role? So Ned Stark, I had Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh yes.
I'd be so mad if I watched him die within the
Mm.
first season of the show. Lena Olin as Catelyn Stark. She played. I know her from Alias. I was a huge fan of that show. She's Sydney's mom. Uh, I picked some of the Skarsgård
Mm-hmm.
sons as some of the Starks, like a young Alexander Skarsgård as like Rob Stark, a young Bill Skarsgård as like Bran. I feel
Okay.
like would be, especially where he winds up going
Mm-hmm.
in this
Mm-hmm.
show. I picked Stellan Skarsgård as Roose Bolton, and I would actually make him
Ooh.
more interesting because
Okay.
I feel like two of the most least interesting characters in Game of Thrones that they could have done more with is Roose Bolton and Stannis,
Mm-hmm.
especially Stannis. But I'll get to
Mm-hmm.
that in a minute. Um, Ramsey, I had German actor Franz Rogowski, who's
Okay.
been in things like Transit, and most recently he just had a film. Oh, what the hell is it called? With Ben Whishaw and one of the young actresses from Blue is the Warmest Color.
Leah
They're
Sidhu?
the other one, Adele,
Oh.
and I can't
Oh yeah,
say
yeah.
the last name well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not gonna. He's just such a slimy person. Liza Aaron, I put Numi Rapace, if that's how you
Oh.
actually say her last name. That would be she would be a very interesting. Kate Dickey's so great in that, but I
Mm-hmm.
love Numi Rapace. This is the one that I got so excited about. Euron Greyjoy, douche pirate. In the show, very dangerous character in the book, apparently. Russell Crowe,
Oh.
because Russell Crowe, like prime Russell Crowe, would be absolutely amazing, and you would legitimately be afraid of him
Yes.
in this show. Balin Greyjoy, his brother, Hugo Weaving,
Okay.
because he's only in the show very briefly and then gets unceremoniously murdered by his brother who shows up. Who are some of the other ones? I went out of my way to find Ming Ming Sung, who's a giant ninja in Rush Hour 3 to play the mountain because he
Oh.
is legitimately 7 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Hound, I put Chow Yun Fat.
Okay.
I think he'd be an
Okay.
interesting choice, and just from like he is uh like 6 feet tall plus. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously he's not the same
Yeah.
as like Sander Clegane in the show, but like I think he'd be interesting. I picked Donnie Yen as Braun
Ooh.
because especially after how much fun he had in John Wick Chapter 4, him
Mm-hmm.
just as this snarky hired sword for Tyrion would be so much fun. I wanted to put Mako or Mako from who's voiced Uncle Iroh
Mm-hmm.
and from Samurai Jack. I had him as Grand Maester Pycelle.
Okay.
So like he had a role in it. I'm switching Jet Li to Barristan Selmy because he just seems like he would be like the most dangerous swordsman in all of Westeros.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see it.
I put Toshiro Mifune as Robert because
Oh.
he might only be in it for 4 episodes, but boy, would he be memorable.
Yes.
And I feel like that would be a perfect thing for him to go just full blown, having so much fun in this show. Hiroki Sanada, I put as Stannis.
Oh, that's a good choice.
He'd be so much better. Nothing against Stephen Delane, but like they didn't really like Stannis was one of the most boring characters in this show, and that's a
Yeah.
problem. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the other ones? Um, the High Sparrow, I put Sung Kang Ho from all of Bong Joon Ho's films. He's like the
Okay.
dad in Parasite,
Oh
and
yeah.
I wanted to put him in here somewhere, and I feel like he would be such an interesting
Mm.
actor to portray that role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also basically I just picked the two children from Parasite as Loris and Marjorie.
Okay.
And Yoon Yo Jung from Minari, Granny Tyrell,
Ah.
because she also is one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones. What a great send off for Diane Rigg, former
Mm-hmm.
Bond wife, from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and then Dorne. I just at least wanted to say I wanted Dev Patel as Oberon since I
Okay.
made shifted Dorne to be based off of India,
Mm-hmm.
and Irfan Khan, who unfortunately passed away, I imagine him as Duran, like the king of Dorne,
Yeah.
who obviously unceremoniously gets murked and taken
Mm-hmm.
over, and then they absolutely just like botched
Mm-hmm.
uh, that whole entire storyline in the actual show. But yeah, I would watch either of ours. I think this would. I wish this could happen. Oh my
Mm.
god! You know, I'm not a huge fan of remaking shows and stuff like that. I wouldn't be mad if at some point somebody remade Game of Thrones.
Again, like I've seen people pretty much argue not even the entire thing. You
Just
just
remake the last couple seasons.
you just start from where season 6 finished. Because you can argue in good faith that 1 through 6 are, yeah, not all the episodes are the greatest,
Yeah.
but still 6 has highs. Like the last 2 episodes are still the highest rated on
Oh, those
IMDb.
last two episodes of season 6 are amazing.
Exactly.
Um, and I binged watched Game of Thrones through the
Okay.
first 6 seasons. I only
Hmm.
watched the last two live.
Okay.
All I'm gonna say is, I think season 7 gets a lot of flack.
Hmm.
Yeah, is it a strong writing, and do they make a lot of convenient choices?
Hmm.
Yes, from like a pacing standpoint. But like season 8 too, like the first couple episodes, like the setup, I
Hmm.
was really sold. And then
Yeah.
the fact that episode 4 should have been a season,
Hmm.
episode 5 should have been a season, and then episode 6 should have been a season. I'm just like,
Yep.
okay, whatever. But I think that would be weird if they
Hmm.
remade the last couple of seasons of it. I think the only thing imaginable would be they just remake it. And
No,
here's
of
the
course.
thing, Warner Brothers would.
Yes. Yes.
They're going to remake Harry Potter. They're going to
Hmm.
reboot a whole bunch of Lord of the Rings stuff. Game of
Hmm.
Thrones isn't
Hmm.
like they would have no qualms start from scratch because everybody would watch it.
Hmm. Hmm. And again, it was actually in my notes. Like, if we go back to Akira Kurosawa, and
Yeah.
this being his version of Game of Thrones, right? Can you imagine? I would love to see version of the episode Long Night. The battle we were all waiting for. The White Walkers, the king against, pretty much, the most of the civilized world of that, fantasy world. And I would love to see his take on the action, because
Yep.
he understood how to shoot an action sequences. Obviously, goes without saying, imagine Akira Kurosawa having access to the modern CGI. I feel like he would be still sensible enough not to overuse it. I
Yeah.
feel like he would still give him budget, and he will try to, like Nolan, he'll try to figure out as much as possible, do it practically. and where obviously we cannot, dragons don't exist, so we need to kind of CGI the dragons, but everything else can be done practically, or most things can be done practically,
Yeah.
and we can actually see something. Uh, like I'm not,
Yeah,
as you
the
said,
lighting was a problem.
I'm not the biggest hater. Like, yes, the last two seasons were slightly not great. I think they still get too much shit online. I'll just say,
They were irredeemable.
has it
Like,
speed run everything? Like, suddenly, because again, the whole thing, and that's what I was kind of warning about spoilers. The whole thing is we take so much time with like first six seasons, and then we speed run how Daenerys goes from we need to free everybody to I'm the new tyrant, I'm the new Mad King or Mad Queen in her instance, and we speed run the entire arc in like 4 episodes. And that's why I feel like many people had the problem with how it ended. We like George R. Martin confirmed that's pretty much how my book will also end, but there will be details, and that's what the show had to understand. That the showrunners had to understand that, okay, just because you guys want to move on to different projects, maybe hire somebody else to
give
finish
it
it up.
up.
Yeah,
That if I were HBO, I would have been like figured out something to
like
like,
stay like producers, but maybe give writing to somebody else, and
oh
you
yeah,
just take a step back.
and like pay them off.
Mm-hmm.
Like give them money to leave. You would have easily made that up making a couple other seasons. But yeah, I think Akira Kurosawa's would be made with so much detail,
Mm-hmm.
so much technical prowess, and
Mm-hmm.
just he knows how to tell a story. And this is one of the peak modern, like this is one of like peak fantasy stories ever
Yes.
told. And I just would love to see it in the hands of Akira Kurosawa. But this was fun. This was interesting. This was a big undertaking, but we did it. Luke,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on and doing this What If.
Always happy to be back.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.